I knew as early as February 2020 that I needed to do something.
I recognized that there was a systematic problem and that this was not about hydroxychloroquine, it was something larger.
Fear shut the world down, and people made a lot of money at it as they were killing us.
I was asked to speak at a freedom rally that was set up to discredit my reputation.
Whoever orchestrated this must not have the safety of this nation in mind.
Medicine and politics should be separated. These doctors were handcuffed.
The American public has awakened. We have a new civil rights movement to restore our rights, and we're going to hold them accountable.
It is a natural progression of a man of God or woman of character to see injustice, to seek it out, and then to act upon it.
Do you hear me? We will never lock down again. This is the hill we die on.
Don't miss New American Heroes with attorney Warner Mendenhall and John Davidson, Mondays on BrokenTruth.tv.
I didn't recommend locking anything down. I recommended to the president that we shut the country down. First of all, I didn't recommend locking anything down.
I didn't recommend locking anything down. I didn't recommend locking anything down.
I didn't recommend locking anything down. I recommended to the president that we shut the country down.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's another beautiful Monday. How you doing, Warner?
I'm doing great. It is a beautiful Monday.
So there's so much going on in this world, and there's so many different things we wanted to talk about today. But our good buddy Scott Miller, a physician's assistant out of Washington State, who's now in another state. I think he's probably in hiding from the state of Washington. He contacted us and said, "Hey, I've got something coming up that I need to talk to you guys about." And so we're going to just go ahead and bring Scott in. You will know Scott from Broken Truth's interview with him. We helped identify him as a targeted individual back in, 2023. And Scott was targeted by the Shots Heard group that was, connected to Bio, the pharmaceutical lobbyist, and sort of weaponized your TDS inclined citizenry to attack any doctors that promoted early treatment, any physicians, assistants, or nurses that warned about issues with vaccines. And Scott was lit up probably just about as hard as Mary Bowden, if not harder. And ultimately, the Washington Medical Commission essentially strips Scott of his, license. So Scott, welcome.
Hi, sorry, I need to raise my thing up. So I always love talking to you. So let me slouch down. So yeah, thank you for having me on.
Scott is very tall, obviously. So Scott, I'm gonna do a quick recap. Right? Was that pretty accurate? Like you had your medical license commission essentially come after you. You had over 100 complaints filed at you, often from people who were not even patients of yours, who had no knowledge of you, but they just saw you and then they background checked. In one instance, they said that you had committed crimes that you didn't disclose in the state of California prior to getting your medical license, right?
Yeah. They said that I had pending felony charges in California and that I fled the state. So I applied for a Washington medical license and then fled the state knowing that I was somehow going to be able to get away from California before, I'm charged with, I go to jail. Now, that flee took 13 months. So it's the slowest flee anyone has ever done. So, but no, I've had probably 100.
Just the punchline is that was a different Scott Miller.
Yeah. Yep. And it took my wife to figure that out. Shelly ended up calling down to tell her. Yeah. So she was the one that investigated it. The chief investigator for the medical commission didn't. He just kept saying, well, how do we know this isn't you? And I'm like, figure it out.
Check
You're the
birthday.
investigator.
Yeah, check the birthday, check the social security, figure it
Right.
out. Oh my goodness. That's interesting.
So Scott, what's the situation now?
Well, so I applied for a friend of mine who was a physician in Alaska. We've known each other for a couple of years, and he heard about the story, and then he heard it fairly in depth at a men's Bible retreat. And it's like, you got to apply for an Alaska license, and I wanted nothing to do with it. I had already applied to Oklahoma. I went through a whole forensic psychiatric, eval. I mean, it took a year and plus to go through that whole. And so, but I had a couple of people just say, just do it. And so that was January. That was January of 24. Wow, we're a long time ago. So it got denied by the medical board in November of 24. But I was able to, it said, if you'd like to appeal. And I thought, well, it's like, yeah, that sounded fun because I have hobbies, So it's like, I'm going to appeal this, not having a clue what I was getting into. So I appealed it, and I figured I'd just represent myself, and I won. I beat the state's motion for summary adjudication. So I fly out to Anchorage tomorrow to sit in front of the medical board.
Let's go back to the beginning here a little bit, and I want to get back to real basics because, first of all, Scott, what is a physician assistant?
Similar to a nurse practitioner. So basically, I had 2 less years of. Well, I went to dental school first, but so you have a couple less years of the academic or didactic training that physicians would have, and then you don't need to do a fellow.
Oh, for some reason we lost his sound, John. I'm not hearing him.
Speak again, Scott.
How did we lose that?
totally lost your audio there.
Yeah, we're not hearing a thing. Like your mic just disappeared or something on your end. We are having some technical issues here.
Yeah. So essentially, a physician's assistant, like he was saying, is a nurse practitioner level type person. They can prescribe some medications. I think it's under a still no audio. You just keep trying, buddy. We'll be here when you get it going.
Yeah, maybe he can log in on the phone if the iPad's not working properly.
Yeah, let's see if the phone works.
We're gonna just have to go with whatever we get going. He's got a allergy. Sorry to the
live television, folks.
Oh,
okay, let's try this again.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear now. That's
Okay.
actually better. That's actually better, Scott. You're coming through.
Okay.
So let's go back to the original question. I mean, I don't want to assume people know what a physician assistant is, but in my view, they have quite a wide range of work that they can do with a patient as a physician assistant, including prescribing. Is that correct? And some diagnosis and things like that. You describe for us what it is.
Yeah, I'll give you an idea of what my scope was. So in pediatrics, so I in the state of Washington, I was able to have a standalone, be a single owner, standalone practice. I had a supervising physician who was remote, my specialties were neurology, asthma, allergies, developmental delays, or neurodivergent kids. So I had a pretty wide range, and then because we're not limited, I was able to take care of all of the moms, dads, and grandparents when COVID came around. But I wasn't that. I don't think there was no medication that we can't prescribe. I mean, it's a strange thing because there's nothing that I couldn't do. There's nothing that I couldn't do that the doctor would do, or vice versa. I mean, filled all those roles. Like I couldn't do surgery. If you're going into some of those specialties, like I couldn't go in and be, I could be first assist, but no, I that's why everybody called me doctor. It was just me, and so I got in trouble all the time. I'm like, not a doctor.
How long were you in practice in Washington State?
10 years.
Wow. And then COVID hits, and I don't want you to expose something that maybe is not on the public record, but let's try to stick to the public record, what, you've been dealing with the boards. But when COVID hit, what was your concern when COVID hit?
Well, it was March 12th of 2020 when Washington started shutting down. So my concern was what was going to happen to the kids when they lost, especially because I took care of so many kind of special needs kids that are going to lose their occupational therapy, their physical therapy, their speech. These are necessary components to their development. And then as the language started getting more hyperbolic, like kids could be vectors of disease, and the fear was starting to ramp up and shutting down schools. I was seeing a mental health crisis just right before my eyes. It didn't take months. This was within a couple weeks. I was watching these kids just crumble, and I was angry. So I started fairly early in trying to open things up, which they didn't
What kind
like.
of things did you do, and lead us up to what you were doing, and then what actually got you in trouble? What got you in trouble with the state of Washington?
I basically, one of the biggest things, I started writing I would get my triple kit prescription pad, because usually everything's electronic, and I'd write prescriptions for parents to go to the park. So I was like, just go open stuff up. And I'm like, well, the park's closed. I'm like, just step over the tape. And like, well, what if they call the police? So I'd leave my cell. I'm like, if somebody calls the police, call me. I'll drive over and chat with the police. So I was basically trying to champion parents to stop complying.
Well, you literally wrote a prescription for the kids to get outdoors. Is that correct?
So I would write. I remember the first mom I did that for, and it was well child check, and she's like, everything's fine. I was like, really? Is it? Like, how are you really doing? And she started to tear up, and she's like, my kids haven't seen their best friends who are neighbors in like 2 weeks. And I looked at her, I'm like, first, there's treatment, because by that, by April, like we all should have known how to treat it. And I said, go outside, like call your friend, get the kids together. So I wrote a prescription advising them the necessity for their kids to engage and interact with their friends. And it was about an hour and a half later, and it's the most fun types of prescriptions I wrote. I got a text message, and it was her kids and the neighbor kids all holding hands at the park. And I had always had a student with me, and I showed them, like, that's medicine right there. Like that's the gift that we can do that really changes lives.
Oh, I mean, I'm astounded at this. I mean, you actually felt like you had to write a prescription, and then how did they interact with the local government? Did the local government respond to their kids gathering outside?
There were some instances where we had there was a pretty staunch progressive group, especially there's a progressive Facebook group, and then a journalist, and so they would go around looking for businesses that weren't complying, looking for just any type of what they would consider like unsafe shenanigans. So I ended up getting to know one of the journalists a bit, but because I was speaking out, I was invited to go to this underground like people's rights group and in Vancouver, Washington, and this was end of April of 2020. And I remember rolling up there, and there's like armed guards, and like, what is going on here? And there were about 100 people, like
like congregating, and I'm like, look at this. I mean, no one was, right? Like people were terrified, and especially in Washington. And I walk up and I'm listening to this woman, Kelly Stewart, preaching, the Constitution and talking about our founding fathers and what it means to have courage and faith. And I'm like, oh, she's saying what I think, but don't do. So we ended up getting to know each other, and she asked if I would speak on the medical front at a rally in Olympia at the Capitol in Washington in May of 2020. And that was kind of, it was funny because I was trying to figure out what to say without burning it down. And I shared the story in the book, and I just called that chapter is just called Olympia because it was so absolutely absurd. It was just it's a crazy story. And I remember getting up on stage. I'm looking across the lawn, thousands of people, and I'm like, okay, Lord, I don't know what to say. I was scared because, everything I was about to say was just contrary to everything that Governor Inslee was telling us. And so I gave a speech, and about 2 months later, I got the first complaint against me. And that complaint happened to be that I had pending felony charges. I lied on my application. And interestingly, I mean, August, September, October, November, December, January, February. I mean, I couldn't beat it. Like I could not get them to believe me, even though they had my application. I couldn't get them to believe me. And by the time I had my full hearing in August of 2022, they ruled that even with all of the evidence, they put it in as that I lied on my application. It was just by accident. So that's what they used to frame me for professional misconduct and for character and professional misconduct.
But the lying on the application, that wasn't about the felony issue in California, or was it?
I mean, but they said that. So I had an investigation. There's an investigation, an anonymous complaint. Met with the investigator. He found he did an investigation. When he told me what it was, I'm like, what? Like, that's crazy. And he told me that he investigated, found no cause. I'm like, okay, cool. I mean, this has never happened before. So I was like, what happens next? He said, well, I'm just going to advise that it's closed. And okay. That was in March of 2023. I sent off my application for a Washington medical license in October. So February, March, April, May, June, July.
I'm sorry, Alaska medical license?
For Washington State. So in the process, it said, to the best of your knowledge, at the time that you're filling out this application, is there an ongoing is there an investigation on you? And I don't know. That was 8 months ago, and he did an investigation, concluded that there was no wrongdoing. So I spoke with the medical director, and then he's like, well, call. So I called the investigator, left a message, called again about a week later, and didn't hear anything. So I spoke with my medical director, and I said, what would you put? And he said, well, tell the truth. To the best of your knowledge, is there still an ongoing investigation? I'm like, well, no, because there is no they found it to be unfounded. He's like, well, then put no. On the next page, it says, have you ever had an investigation? I'm like, yep. And then if you have to mark yes, then you have to write out this, I wrote out a lengthy explanation as to what the investigation was, and that's it. And I sent off my application and, got a medical license. And then you have to every 2 years, you have to re-up your license. So it's not like it goes into some dark cave archive. So they're seeing it every 2 years when you're renewing your license.
This was a biannual license application, and you'd already been in practice for 8 or 10 years at this point.
Yeah, you just have to renew it. every 2 years. You basically so they can make
So
money.
in the findings in Washington State, what exactly did they say you did wrong that caused the revocation?
That's so. I'll just because as I'm preparing for the hearing, I'll tell you some of the stuff that they said that my encouragement of the spread of a disease in such a reckless fashion showed that he was a truly substantive evil. That my misinformation and disinformation caused an insidious and immediate danger of deterring the public from using evidence-based protections from the severity and contagion that was paramount. That my insidious and imminent danger, and because of my speech, they said that my speech was caused. I mean, I was basically killing people because of my speech. They had me as practicing below the standard of care for prescribing ivermectin, professional misconduct for obstructing an investigation. I mean, it's the statement of charges is. I mean, it's 26 pages, so it's pretty lengthy. The first one, I have 2 sets of statements of charges. They came after me again when I started my wellness practice, which is how ended up actually having to flee the state. That's what led to the permanent revocation of my license. So they've been I mean, listen, they're difficult to shake. They just keep coming.
Did you have attorneys involved at any point in this?
I had 3, yeah.
What happened with that?
We ended up. So I had retention of my license in October of 21. Pause hearing in November of 21 to, prove that I wasn't this insidious, dangerous, evil person. They disagreed, so they said they were going to keep the suspension and that I could have a full hearing. So my hearing was in August of 2022, which, it's a long time to go without working with. So I had my full hearing, 5-day hearing in August of 2022. And it was fascinating because even the state's witnesses, they said that I lowered the standard of care of my profession within the community. I was directly involved in disrupting the hospital community relationship and the physician-patient relationship because I was helping advocate to get people out of the hospitals, and I gave a lot of speeches about what to do, how to prevent avoid the hospital at all costs. I mean, I sent people there because I had to, but we were able to get most of them out. But, they said that it was basically every part of my professional and character type of thing was attacked. They went after every single thing.
That's horrific.
Well, and that's how I found you, Scott, was we had people inside of the Shots Heard Around the World group, which was created by a group called Public Good Projects, or managed by a group called Public Good Projects. It was originally created by Todd Wolin, of pediatrician out of Pennsylvania. And then it was taken over by this, non-profit that got hundreds of thousands of dollars from Bio, the pharmaceutical lobbyist, which has members like Pfizer and Moderna involved. And then they basically just created a private group on Facebook that let every single crazy person essentially be brown shirts and go across the internet, across any area of the country. And anytime someone like you would speak out at a public event, they would light you up and try to get you medical license board complaints, and conducted lawfare under the guise of a nonprofit, which was hosting a private Facebook group. And, if I ever come across a conservative or a Christian in that group, I'll let you know. We haven't found it yet. Eventually, this group got shut down, but we found these posts targeting Scott. And in our other interview with Scott, we discussed and show some of these posts, but That was
It was
a
weird.
signal. Yeah.
It was weird to see when you told me that it made sense because the volume, I mean, or the tenacity. I'd do a 2 hour, I did like a 3.5 hour event at a church where pastor kept saying like, you can leave. And it was packed and people had questions. And so I just kept, I stayed until all questions were answered. Somebody recorded it and sent, I don't know where they sent it off to initially, but somebody had to go through that entire thing and listen to all of it. And, I had a lot of those. So they had to be, they had to spend a lot of time trying to go after us.
What's the status of the Washington case right now? You've got your license has been revoked. Do you have appeals? What do you have coming up on that?
I don't. An attorney in Washington heard about it because of something through Alaska, and he mentioned something about like the judicial review or a petition for judicial review. Basically, what happened was the first stipulation that was imposed by the Washington Medical Commission was that I do a voluntary inpatient neuropsychiatric evaluation at a facility in Kansas, and especially at the time and with how much, and it was affiliated with the WMC, and it would, everyone around me was like, you can't do that. They'll harm you. I'm like, which was the first thing I thought. I'm like, if I voluntarily go in there, I don't know what's going to happen to me. So we petitioned to get that removed. And then it would have left, and all I would have had to do is go to University of San Diego and do a medical re-education so I could learn what standard of practice or standard of care is, and then I could learn what evidence-based medicine is, and then show, prove that I recognize how to differentiate between the quackery and snake oil salesman I was doing versus, what the hospitals were doing. Then I would do an ethics class. It'd be like a 3-day long ethics class. And then I'd write a paper, just a 1,000-word paper showing that I had been rehabilitated. And then they would consider, with other stipulations, returning my license. So we tried to get one of them removed, and it's a long story, but in the meantime, I had done a bunch of integrative health practitioner certifications, so I could at least say some stuff legally, not treat or cure. But so I started a kind of a wellness health coaching clinic, and they came after me pretty hard with that. Like complaint after complaint, and another, it didn't matter. All of the letters of cooperation, what they'd say is I didn't answer it substantively enough, meaning I didn't entrap myself. And I'll be really quick with this, and I apologize. So they didn't like one of my letters of cooperation that I filled out with my attorneys. So they sent a statement of charges, which is more in depth, but they sent it to my old practice. They sent it to where I had my pediatric practice. So I end up getting this packet at my new office, like 36 hours before it's due. I'm like, that's a problem. And so I emailed the attorney for the Washington Medical Commission, Rick Glean, and asked if I could get an extension, which they're pretty good about, especially since they knew that I wasn't at that practice. They knew I wasn't at that address. So I sent an email and was, so that was it. I was just waiting for his response. And then, we were waiting to meet with a judge, a Superior Court judge, to try and get that stipulation removed. And then in the meantime, I heard, I think it was through the Columbian, a newspaper, that the Washington Medical Commission had an emergency meeting and moved to do a permanent revocation of my license, that I was unrehabilitatable, because I was interfering with the investigation by not, in a timely fashion, getting their statement of charges answered.
John, this sounds like communist re-education camps, and this is not the first story I've heard like this. Have you heard about this with some of the practitioners, John?
Yeah, this is, unfortunately, this is what Mary Bowden went through. There were countless other, the same Washington Medical Commission went after Ryan Cole. And I sat in through that nightmarish joke of a trial for about a week. We did live streams on X for it. This is where does free speech come into play here? Yeah, I want to show you.
There isn't. So they spent a lot of time talking about my First Amendment right, and because what I was saying was in such opposition of what the governor had been putting out for the state. It's really fascinating to read her, Dr. Leslie Enzian's, the state's expert witness, but the way they crafted their argument to censure my speech, it's really, it's crazy to read it, because you're watching them literally throw away our First Amendment rights.
I've got on the screen right now. One of a guy named Mark Robbins posted in this private Shots Heard group, which, by the way, they deleted. So they're trying to erase, their crime. Maybe we should send a spoliation alert to Facebook, Warner. But this was an example of the kind of post that would show up in that group. So this guy, Mark Robbins, wanted to go after Scott for posting a GoFundMe to defend himself legally. So that not only were they trying to destroy your career and tortious interference with your business, but they were also trying to inhibit your ability to raise funds to defend yourself after your business had been shut down. Mm-hmm. It's really insidious. I mean, it's pure evil what they were doing. Here's another lady, Kathy Hennessy. She's really all over this post and this forum. This is a post that you posted on September 11th, 9/11, and you were talking about something that you were dealing with, about you were helping patients or whatever, and you tried to go out to dinner with your wife, but you got sucked back in, I think. And then Kathy, please report this post is false information. If you wanted to talk about why we got censored on Facebook, on Twitter, it's because that's part of what this group did. They knew how to rig Facebook. And not only that, Public Good Projects was giving Facebook hundreds of thousands of dollars for advertisements that supported the vaccines and mandates and things like that. So these are just two that I had offhand in our old.
Scroll down to the bottom of that, John. I wanted to read the end of that because that's so similar. I'm looking at this. We just got done with that Scott Schara trial, and mm-hmm. The medications they were giving people, sedating them, and just really and trying to get them on a ventilator. I mean, that's just a story that just killed so many people. I mean, we had statistics early on that came up in our trial with the experts that 80% of the people who were ventilated early were dying. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was a remarkable number. It did lessen over time, but initially, especially in the early part of the COVID, these ventilators were used to protect the staff, not really for the patient's well-being, but to keep the virus so-called circulating within a closed system. They thought that would work, and then that killed 80% of the people that came in. So there's a fancy word for that. I think it's called iatrogenic injury.
Yeah.
That means that the medical treatment itself is what ends up killing the patient. And unfortunately, I think we've seen, in my view, that's hundreds of thousands of people. I don't know what you think or what you've seen, but the statistics have been appalling.
I had one.
Go ahead.
I had one nurse, anesthesiologist nurse, tell me that he had his hospital unnecessarily intubated patients in California, and they did so many at once that the available pressure of their oxygen supply dropped. It was a whole building pressure system. They had so many people under vent. So this was, and that's just one area in California that didn't even have the notoriety of deaths like, say, New York did early on. I think this is something that is endemic nationwide, and people didn't know to question it.
Yeah, we had pulmonologists in our local hospitals that were putting people on a ventilator that were on, 12, 13, 15 liters of oxygen, which is when I was hearing, and I was hearing those stories, and I had sent a few people. I hadn't treated them. It was earlier on, and they were elderly, and they were satting in the 80s, and it sounded hard. I'm like, I don't want to be responsible for this. So, and I said, you got to have them go to the hospital, and they all died. And I knew the family. So I just sent for their family, 4 family members to a hospital, and they all died within, a week. And I was talking to my office manager and front office, staff. I'm, what do we do? And I remembered having it was like a real come to Jesus moment where I'm like, because I didn't have a lot of time. I was running my beef practice, and so I started listening to MedCram, critical care. I just started cranking through critical care pulmonology lectures to try and get as much, just shove as much information in me as possible. And that was kind of the impetus of taking care of, one of the medical commissioners was like, well, why did you think you were qualified to take care of somebody at home that their oxygen saturation was 68 or 72? I'm like, nothing. I didn't feel qualified at all. Now, all of them lived, but I didn't feel qualified. I just knew what the alternative was going to be. They'd be immediately vented, and then they'd have about a 5% survival rate.
Now, Scott, I don't want to miss what you're coming up for this week. Wednesday, you are in Alaska, and you are going to the Alaska Medical Board, and this is your appeal.
This correct. I'm actually able to appeal it with the medical board. So
you're doing it on your own.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? I mean, Warner can't do everything.
Boy, I do wish we had counsel for you on this. It's tomorrow?
Wednesday.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
It's funny because John had texted me 2 days ago. It was pretty late, and you're like, make sure you get some sleep. Apart from like going over to my in-laws and I took a shower, I've been sitting here like since 8 hours before you and I had texted, and then you're like, well, get some sleep, because so that was Saturday. So I've been sitting here straight for 2 days writing up my.
Yeah, I think you got to get some good rest the night before.
Well, yeah,
you're going to be representing yourself, and have they kind of given you any indication on what they're going to talk to you about, what the questions are going to be like, what their focus is?
The state's not presenting a case. What the assistant attorney general said is that the merits speak for themselves. I had a permanent revocation of my license, and I didn't sufficiently go through the judicial review or petition process to challenge the finding of fact. So therefore, I accepted their finding of fact, even though I was able to disprove every single one of the charges except for one. So it's going to be basically, as the judge has been awesome. Judge Wilson. She's amazing. I kind of have like an intellectual crush on her. The way she's able to like drop kind of nuggets of
Well,
she's been able to guide me and kind of where to maneuver in my case.
The ivermectin notice that the FDA put out that it is for humans now and can be prescribed for COVID and whatnot. Don't quote me on that. Confirm it yourself, but that's definitely probably something that can help you in terms of, the attacks on you for prescribing a medication that was not a approved countermeasure.
Below the standard of care. So
Alaska's a different state compared to Washington. Is it better or worse? I don't know.
Completely. So the Alaska Medical Board on December 9th of 2021, I believe, I think it was December 9th, issued a statement that they would not be targeting or going after medical professionals who are using off-label, FDA approved, but off-label therapies for treating COVID or targeting medical professionals for misinformation, disinformation. So that was their statement in 21, which, that's kind of in the full swing of the pandemic. So the fact that they were basically taking a neutral approach when everybody, all the other states were, Texas was a little more lenient, but, in the state of Washington, you still can't say the vaccine. If you're a practitioner, if you have a medical license and you said publicly that the vaccines aren't safe, they would come after your license.
Even though the Secretary of HHS has said that the mRNA platform is not effective and unsafe. The risk.
They have not changed. So with Dr. Ryan Cole's hearing, that Leslie Enzian, the doctor who wrote this, and let me share this really quick, just because I think it's interesting. The provisions, this is about speech. The provisions at issue here are content neutral under these principles. Neither the legislature in the passage of the UDA on professional conduct provisions nor the commission in taking this disciplinary action by a respondent was motivated by disagreement with the respondent's messages. Rather, the commission is motivated by the need to defend the lives and health of its citizens and public trust in the medical profession, seriously, in the medical profession, and that the statute directs that a license is subject to discipline if he engages in conduct that constitutes moral turpitude, whether that conduct is executed by means of speech or non-expressive actions. And then they just keep going on and on and on about the things that they're able to. But I love how they say, we weren't necessarily in disagreement with words Mr. Miller was saying, except for every single one, right? Like every single thing I said, but they, the way they wrote up my speech. And that's where, if you go through it, they use the word dangerous so many times that it almost made me happy. To dangerous, insidious, and incompetent. And this one, the respondent's medically dilatory conduct. It's just,
one of the
beautiful.
things, one of the things that I found interesting in Ryan Cole's trial was that the state's witness, who's just like I think a GP nearby. Anyway, she'd only treated like 45 patients. I think she was the same witness for you, and somehow she went from critiquing his medical judgment to January 6th, Donald Trump, frontline doctors. Like they were just, grouping everything together. This was a witch hunt run by people with TDS. And it had nothing to do with science. It was all about control.
And what she was, this was what fascinated me. It was just total deja vu. I listened to all of day one, and I remember telling Shelley, I'm like, I've got to give Ryan a call, because I knew Dr. Leslie Enzian was up next. And what I heard day one, it was it was as though we were sitting in my hearing 13 plus months later, where, you know, they keep saying we follow the science, you need to stay up on the science, et cetera, et cetera. Their words hadn't changed. And then Dr. Enzian, when she was, you know, she's just, she's such a nefarious creature. But her recommendations, like what she was pushing for was for the use of remdesivir outpatient. Like that was what she was pushing for. Like not actually looking into, like, do we have safe, effective, off-label medications that are dirt cheap? She was actively pushing to try and get facilities to use remdesivir in an outpatient setting. In the end of 23, that was how her science changed. More remdesivir.
So there's a connection, you know, you're right there with UW, which is where the physician that invented the first COVID test. Remember that in January or February 2020? She invented the first COVID test. And then, amazingly, the same doctor also connected to the Gates Foundation. Strange.
I don't understand that connection.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how that could happen. The same doctor for NIAID, Fauci's group, is the one that changed the end goal for the remdesivir study from survival to time to recovery.
Yeah,
which according to Paul Merrick is clinical misconduct, right?
You would think, yeah. So time to recovery, and it's been 5 years, but I believe it was time to recovery was 15 days to 12 days or 15 days to 11 days.
Yeah, it was such an arbitrary, and you could, like, if anybody really looked into those numbers, I bet they wouldn't hold up. Funny thing, I did go to UW and ask for all of her emails, the doctor in question. I said, I'd like to public records request all emails between this doctor and Gates Foundation between that time frame. It's taken them a long time to get those back to me. I don't know why.
When did you do that? That's brilliant, by the way. I love that.
About 8 months ago.
Well, I mean, that sounds about right. I mean,
they're faster than
that's how long
FDA.
it takes. That's how long it takes the medical committee. Like when I applied for the Alaska license, they have to send the documentation over. And interestingly, they only send the documentation they have, because we had a whole hearing. They could have but they only send their statement of charges and finding of fact without having any, so it's so difficult to defend yourself against,
I want to back up and try to understand this. They were supposed to send over all the documentation for the charges that you're facing in Alaska?
There's so Washington State, because anywhere that you've had a license, you have to have that information. So the Washington Medical Commission sends the information. But what's interesting is when they do that, they'll have. So I was accused of coercive behavior and encouraging a wife to take her husband, patient B, out of the ICU on a Friday night, Labor Day, to get him out of the ICU. He was on BiPAP, to come over to my office at apparently 9 o'clock so that I could prescribe him ivermectin. I didn't know who the patient was. I had no idea who this man was. I didn't know he was in the hospital. I didn't find out about him until the next day. Yet they blamed me. They said that I was the one that was instrumental in spearheading this whole, escaping from the ICU AMA to try and avoid mechanical ventilation. And in fairness, had I done that, I would consider myself clinically insane to encourage somebody on 60 liters, BiPAP to leave AMA and have 10 liters max to give it home. That's dangerous. I would have found a way to have gotten him treated in the hospital surreptitiously, but I would never, and they wouldn't know how, but I would never do that. It doesn't matter that they know that I didn't. It doesn't matter that the wife signed a sworn statement. She testified at my hearing that I had no interaction whatsoever.
Right.
We had, go ahead.
So we've got about 3 minutes. We've got to be out of here by the end of the hour. But I wanted to say, is there any final thoughts, suggestions, Warner, that you can have that don't, that aren't medical or legal advice officially?
Well, I just think, I really do wish you had representation in this hearing because, and we have dealt with, these types of charges here in Ohio. I do think it's important to have an attorney available. I really applaud your effort though as a pro se, and I will say I hate to bring up AI, but AI can help construct and organize the argument in a logical way, sometimes quickly. So if you're feeling stressed, run it and help it organize the information that you fed into it, and you can even play with it so that it will generate questions, likely questions that would come up, and you can have those answers kind of ready to go, kind of pre-selected as they come up. There's so much wrong with what happened to you here, and the First Amendment implications are just horrendous. You and I spoke in Houston, if you remember.
Yep, correct.
So we did speak personally a couple of years ago, I think now. Is this thing going to be streamed in any way? Is it going to be online at all?
I mean, all of my witnesses are going to be logging into either Zoom or Meet so that they can engage or interact with us. So it has to be in some capacity. I was thinking about that where I don't know what to say, where like have John have one of the links and then it's going. Listen, it's going to be fun. So I've written all of the questions for all of the witnesses, and I've got a really fun, diverse mix of doctors, practitioners, a couple patients, a couple pastors, and so how we're working it and navigating it. But I love your suggestion about plugging some of that into AI and having it generate, because I don't know the questions they're going to ask that the state, that the attorney is going to ask my witnesses. I'm excited for any question they're going to ask them. I really am. I cannot wait for him to.
Back to this question: is it streaming? Is this a public hearing?
I'm waiting to see. I asked that question Friday, and they're 3 hours behind. So I was giving them a little time to respond to me.
Well, if so, let us know.
There's a lot of things that really bother me here. I mean, the standard of care issues, and that they're using that to discipline you is just astounding. I mean, the way standard of care is being used and has been altered in the medical profession is actually really dangerous, because the standard of care in some places may be remdesivir, which we know has a horrific impact on people that take it. So the standards of care have literally been killing people in the COVID process, in my view. And we've, obviously we're trying a couple of cases on that issue. And then, not to mention informed consent or anything like that, which you were trying to give your patients and the public, by the way. Not to mention the idea that science isn't as about settled ideas, it's about challenging ideas. And medicine is a science and an art. And you have to be able to question and iterate in order to get to the best solutions with any individual patient, certainly. But these broad standards of care and this evidence-based medicine,
consensus. Now they're using consensus. It's like evidence-based, but now it's like, what's the consensus? I'm like, how many people are we talking about as far as consensus? That's even more dangerous.
Right, because the consensus used to be the world was flat. I think that consensus may have been overturned.
Right.
I know a guy, he says the other way.
Yeah, well, I know, I do too now. So, and nevertheless, it's worth having the argument, even if somebody still thinks the world is flat. Let's have the discussion. There's no reason to suppress it. But more importantly, in medicine, it is an art. You have to go patient by patient, and there's all kinds of, and using these off-label medications was really important in COVID for millions of people. And that should not be a violation of the standard of care. So I don't know. Yeah, consensus is often wrong, as consensus was on the mRNA. The consensus of the government in the last administration was mRNA is good. The benefits outweigh the risks. But I think that the new administration has a proper stance that the risks do not outweigh the benefits. And the data is coming in a horrific way in terms of long-term injury and damage to the people who took the shots, and the approximately 500 to 700,000 that have died from taking the shot. So I don't know. I really appreciate that your strong stance on this, and I'm first of all happy to chat with you if you felt like I could add something, and I certainly want to, your story and whatever can happen with that. I certainly think it's a very important story to tell.
Thank you.
I agree.
By the way, I did write a book, and I'm told it's good. So there's
the most dangerous man in Washington. Your book, the most dangerous man in Washington.
Scott, I was more impressed with that gigantic male chicken that you had back there.
You know what? Leave it alone, John. Leave it alone. This is a family show.
Does he have a name?
Huh?
Does he have a name?
I can't say it on air.
We'll save it for the after hours.
And then really quick, there's still because I'm still paying off legal fees from before, so we have that GiveSendGo is actually still active, and I am going to need moving forward with a few other things that are really, really cool. I've spoken with some attorneys, and that's the only thing that's preventing moving forward. So if anybody thinks, hey, this is a good cause, then hey,
let me get that GiveSendGo up there. I'm going to put it down at a lower third as well.
Oh, I'll look at Shelly.
Let's see if I can add this as a lower third.
Well, yeah, and if you're listening to this, please chip in whatever you can, even if it's just a cost of a cup of coffee.
No, I mean it really does all help. It matters. It's really, I was talking to Dr. Bowden about it. People don't realize when they say, how come more people didn't stand up? And, she didn't lose her license, but she's in a battle for it. It's really, really expensive. I mean, I lost my license. I lost my business. And so and then in the same process, I had 3 attorneys. And so it's like you're getting hit in so many different directions. And I mean, it sounds weird. I didn't care really initially or at the time, because I just looked at every single situation where I would ask God, I want nothing to do with this. If this is, or my wife or my staff are like, Scott, this is insane. We've gone so far outside of reasonable of what we were doing and the number of people we were being asked to care for. And I'd pray about it. And I'm like, okay, Lord, what do you want from, how do you want to use me? And I would say, I would prefer that our phones shut off and we just see pediatric patients, but show me how you want me to serve. And I remember that specific day, and I got to clinic the next morning, and my office manager, she meets me at the side door. She's like, what did you do? I'm like, what? She's like, did you post something? Did you do an interview? I'm like, what? No. She's like, our phones have been ringing off the hook since 8:00. We had 21 new COVID patients. I mean, from all over the country. But what did you do? And I told her about how Shelly and I had gotten in an argument and how she was scared and et cetera. And then I prayed about it and asked God, if you want this to stop, you can shut the phones off, but just help make it, if you could make it obvious, because I'm fairly obtuse. And so I told that story, and she looked at me as like one of the most grounded Christian women I've ever met. She's like, well, I guess we've got some more work to do. And I was like, oh, no fuss, didn't no pushback at all. She just goes, well, I guess we've got some work to do. And I was like, yep. Yeah.
Well, Scott, good luck, brother.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you got to go.
Yeah.
Well, you got to go. Go get some sleep. Do well, and we'll pray for you. And send us a link if there's a live show of it.
I absolutely will. Yeah, I'm gonna.
I'll restream
I'll
it.
go
Yeah.
on.
All right.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be a good time. So, all right, you guys have a great day.
Yeah. Please buy Scott's book and give him a donation,
Oh.
guys. Yeah. Thank you very much, Scott.
All right, take care, guys.
Thank you.
You too.
Yep.
Bye.
Sorry, I'm going to play one of our little outgoing videos here.
Oh, I want to see an outgoing video.
I'll stay on.
Freedom Council is nothing without all of you. How do we go about getting people held criminally responsible for their acts? The military is still at risk. Election interference, the medicalization of childhood. These drug dealers like Pfizer and Moderna, we can seize their property. We develop our litigation through conferences like this. It's going to come through communications. It's going to come through conversations. And Freedom Council is that conversation.
For information, visit freedomcouncil.org.